Let me tell you about this block right here. This one that I did, I've got a story to tell because it was way more difficult than I thought that it should have been. I'm not really sure why, because it's not even that complicated. But in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make it. I'm going to go through all of the struggles that I had and hopefully some tips and tricks that will make it much easier for you to do. I recorded the whole time while I was struggling. Once I figured it out, it was easy peasy from there, but for whatever reason, it was not connecting in my brain. Grab your sewing gear and let's get to it. Now, one other note about this block is from the book that I've been using on my series of beginner quilt blocks. This is the book that I've been using. It is by C&T Publishing. I have no idea if it is still available to get, but I got it on clearance at a store a long time ago and I held on to it and I was like, okay, I'm going to go through and I'm going to actually do the blocks that I tabbed with my little sticky notes here. For years, that was the only patchwork that I did, was just strictly squares, no piecing of anything fancy. I just recently decided to be like, oh, I'm going to do some half square triangles. Again, one of the easiest components you can do, but just so used to staying in one lane and not getting out of it. I have learned so much just from doing this series, especially even with the flying geese. I really had fun making them. The traditional way is definitely a great way to get familiar with it, and then you can kind of go from there. But yep, on to the video. All right, so for this block, we are going to be going to our scrap bin, of course, and we are going to get us some squares and some rectangles because that is what's going to be needed for this block. Now, what I'll show you is all of the components that I use to make the flying geese and also the central square, and the sizes will be on the screen. You can pause that and take note of what you need. But what I did do for this block was I had my book very, very close to me so that I could get all of the components in the right spots, all of the darker squares where they needed to go, because I did want to follow the book as closely as possible. What you're going to do is you're going to take one of your rectangles and one of your darker squares, put them pretty sides together, and you're going to make a diagonal line where I'm showing you right here on the video. Now on this line, I'm using one of my heat erasable pens because that's my favorite marking tool. And you're just going to make a line right on the diagonal, and that is actually going to be the line that we sew on. There's a lot of other blocks that we do where we actually sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the line, but for this, we are going to sew right on the line that we just drew. Once you come back to your table, this is what you're going to have. You're going to have this one little flap, which is the flap that we want to keep. And then you're going to have this other side that we're going to trim off. So now what you're going to do is take your favorite ruler. Mine is this small square. And you're going to measure a 1/4 inch from the line that you just sewed. And you're going to go ahead and trim off those little triangles on the end. And now that is going to be the first part of your flying goose. Geese? Flying gooses? Yeah, you get what I'm saying. But now you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side of your block. And you're going to be using one of the lighter squares for this side. So you're going to take your diagonal and you're going to mark it with your tool. And then go to your sewing machine or hand sew, and you're going to stitch right on that line. And again, we're going to take this side and we're going to trim off the little triangles. And that is your flying goose component. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but yeah, you're going to have that little overlap right there on the edges, and that is exactly how you want it to look. Now for this block, we are going to be good. We're going to get the iron out. We're going to press as we go, because that is another lesson that I have learned is very crucial to having your blocks look halfway decent at the end. What you're going to do is you're going to do that exact same process 3 more times. You want to be aware of what side that you're putting your little wings. I think that's what they're called on the sides. But you want to make sure that you're putting your wings on the correct side, like light and dark and all that, because you want all of your flying geese components to look exactly the same. When I was researching how to do a flying goose, I saw that there was a method that a lot of people use, which is a 4 at a time. Now, since this is the first time that I've ever done this, I was like, I'm just going to keep it simple, keep it traditional, just so that I was less likely to mess something up. And I am glad that I did do that, because yeah, next time if I make this block, I will use the other method of making 4 at a time, but for this, it just felt right to keep it simple. Now, after you get all of your blocks pressed and lined up and ready to go, then this is what you're going to be left with. You've got your 4 flying geese ready to attach to your center square with what's called partial seams. Now, I went to the book and I looked at the layout of how it needed to be. Now, every time before I put a block together, I like to lay things out, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and just make sure that I've got everything how it needs to go. So that is how I started whenever I put these pieces together. And you're going to see in the next 3 minutes of footage that for whatever reason, I could not figure this out. It was one of the toughest things that I have done with my block series. I looked in the book, I analyzed it. There was actually there's a page in the back of the book that like shows you how to do a partial seam. And I looked at it multiple times. I was marking center points, taking into account in my head seam allowances, and thinking like, okay, so if I put this here, then this should go here. And there was so much brain power that I am using during this process. I was like, oh, let me mark the center point and let me sew this and see how it goes. So I sewed the center square to one of my flying geese, and it was not right. I was looking at how to connect the second one, and I was like, this is not how it needs to go. So got to get the seam ripper out, start over. So then I went back and laid all of my components, and I was like, okay, I think that my center square is actually too big. And it was. It actually was. So I needed to actually trim off 1/2 inch, I believe is what I took off of there, because my center square was 3.5 and it should have been 2.5. But this is me looking at all of the intersections and thinking, okay, so if I do it like this should work. I'm telling you, there's that meme of the lady with the formulas that's going around her head. This was me. There was a point in time where I sat at the block and I was like, I'm going to have to just walk away from this. I could not figure it out. And I was so frustrated that I was just like, I'm not even going to finish recording this. I'm just going to leave it be. But I looked at it. I looked at that page in the back, actually got that center square, and I was like, maybe if I press the seam allowances, maybe it'll make more sense to me. I had marked it, I pressed it, and I was like, okay, maybe this will help. Newsflash and spoiler alert, it did not help. I have no idea why it just was not clicking. So this is me taking that center block and just visualizing how it should go. Every time that I do one of these blocks, it's the first time that I've ever done anything like this. But once I got it, and once I got that first one, I got the rest of them on there like easy breezy beautiful. And it was awesome because I was just thinking, why so long? But once you figure out how to do that partial seam and how to get everything connected, it's like gold. And it was such a good feeling. Because it took me so long to figure this out, my seams are all sorts of jacked up on the back, but that is okay because we completed it. And you've got you a nice night vision quilt block. Now, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this block. If you have any sort of struggles with that partial seam, I'm sure that yours is going to be much easier than mine, and hopefully it makes sense. But again, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.